Las Vegas, a glittering facade of American excess. An empire built not on stone, but on the blinding glare of neon, the seductive click of chips, and a relentless flood of foreign money. But in this chaotic symphony of global tourism, one group was the undisputed conductor, the Chinese traveler. And make no mistake, these were no ordinary sightseers. They were the high rollers, the whales, injecting billions into the city's greedy heart, its casinos, its opulent malls, its extravagant suites. For years, Vegas paraded them like a prize, its most precious, most profitable asset. But now, that glittering crown is shattered. The once packed flights from across the Pacific now land like ghost ships, half empty, or worse, canceled entirely. Those luxury boutiques, once ringing with the sound of Mandarin, have fallen deathly silent, their sales figures in a terrifying freefall. Entire buffets, once tailored to their tastes, have shuttered for good, and a chilling whisper echoes across the casino floors. A whisper of a financial black hole that the powerful are desperately trying to ignore. The neon glow of the Strip is a lie. Behind that dazzling facade, insiders are sounding the alarm. The vanishing Chinese tourist is a seismic shock, a tremor that threatens to bring the entire glittering edifice crashing down. And the question that hangs over this city like a death shroud is brutally simple. Why? Why have the very people who bankrolled this desert fantasy suddenly turned their backs on it, abandoning it completely? What damning secret are the casino magnates hiding? What truth behind this mass exodus are they so desperate to keep from the American public? For decades, Las Vegas sold itself as more than a city. It was a global phenomenon, a siren call to the world. Millions flocked here, chasing the hollow promise of fortune, of opulent fantasy and manufactured spectacle. But behind the scenes, one group became the silent, indispensable lifeline, the Chinese visitor, the very fuel for the casino's insatiable engine. By the mid-2010s, the numbers were staggering. Billions of dollars flowing in annually. Some insiders calculated they were responsible for nearly 20% of all international gambling revenue, a truly colossal figure. This wasn't about filling standard hotel rooms. We're talking about entire floors of suites at the Bellagio, fleets of private jets on standby, and sums of money changing hands at the baccarat tables that would make your head spin. Let's be brutally honest. Chinese money was the secret engine driving the Strip's relentless expansion. And then the world stopped. The pandemic hit and the entire system imploded. But as the world slowly stitched itself back together, as tourism began to rebound elsewhere, Vegas executives noticed something deeply, profoundly wrong. The Chinese travelers weren't returning. In 2019, a staggering 300,000 visitors from mainland China flooded Las Vegas. Fast forward to 2024, and that number has been brutally slashed to less than half. And the forecast for 2025? It's a flat line. There is no recovery in sight. Those once routine flights from Beijing have become collector's items, a rare and troubling sight. Entire businesses built on this tourism have been wiped out. The tour operators, the fleets of buses once teeming with visitors, they've vanished. Their doors shuttered for good. Even the luxury titans on the Strip are bleeding, quietly admitting to devastating double-digit losses because their most vital clientele has evaporated. And what makes this financial carnage so terrifying is the stark, damning contrast. Because while cities like Paris, London, and Bangkok are celebrating a powerful resurgence of Chinese tourists, Las Vegas, the self-proclaimed global capital of entertainment, is being left in the dust. It's been utterly abandoned, which forces us to ask the one question nobody wants to answer. Why is the world's gambling mecca being shunned by the very people it once exploited as an endless source of cash? But the truth, the ugly truth, is that this catastrophe isn't about flight schedules or temporary travel bans. That's the convenient lie. Those on the inside will tell you a different story. They'll whisper about how Vegas has become a toxic destination for the Chinese. A trifecta of spiraling costs, draconian policies from Beijing, and a growing stench of corruption seeping from the casinos themselves. These aren't just cracks in the facade, they're symptoms of a rot that goes deeper than anyone dares to imagine. Because while the Strip puts on its brave, glittering face, promising fortunes to the hopeful, behind the locked doors of the boardrooms, a cold, hard panic has set in. And the numbers are screaming the truth. Billions of dollars in projected revenue, gone, evaporated into thin air. The entire predatory business model, built on luring in Asian high rollers, is imploding. Now, even the most legendary hotels on the Strip are like ghost towns on a Tuesday night. The carefully crafted illusion of Las Vegas as an unshakable global titan is crumbling before our very eyes. And as terrifying as that sounds, it's merely the tip of a very dark and dangerous iceberg. The data shows the wound, but it doesn't reveal the weapon. The real question, the one that should keep us all up at night, is what catastrophic series of events truly poisoned the well for Chinese tourists? And what are the casino bosses so terrified of us finding out? Because this wasn't a sudden accident. It was a slow-motion train wreck. It was a death by 1,000 cuts, a series of brutal shocks that sent tremors through the entire industry. Each scandal, each betrayal, tore another chunk out of the city's manufactured reputation, leaving deep, festering wounds that refused to heal. And the first major blow? It came when federal regulators finally pulled back the curtain, slamming one of Vegas's most iconic casinos with a massive, multi-million-dollar fine for turning a blind eye to a torrent of dirty money. On the surface, it was presented as just another corporate slap on the wrist, the kind of headline Vegas has learned to cynically shrug off. But this time was different. This time, the timing was utterly catastrophic, because the high rollers ensnared in this dragnet were overwhelmingly from China. And you better believe Beijing took notice. It was a chilling, almost instantaneous reaction. Chinese travel agencies, once eager promoters, slammed on the brakes, gutting their Vegas tour packages overnight. The poison spread like wildfire across Asian social media, painting a terrifying picture of the Strip, a treacherous landscape where unsuspecting visitors could be ensnared in shadowy international investigations. And then came the silence. The ghost town hotels. Before 2020, waves of Chinese tour groups were the lifeblood of icons like Caesar's Palace, with entire wings booked solid months in advance. But by a grim 2023, tour operators watched in horror as those bookings vanished into thin air. Hotels, once fat and happy on this guaranteed river of cash, were suddenly forced into brutal cuts, axing staff and boarding up once thriving restaurants. The haunting spectacle of cavernous, silent lobbies sent a shockwave of fear not just through the executive suites, but down to the very soul of the city, the everyday workers. Bellhops, waiters, dealers, the backbone of this town, watched their livelihoods evaporate overnight. But the most devastating symbol of this collapse? The fall of the legendary Vegas buffets. These monuments to American excess, these sprawling temples of indulgence, were a pilgrimage site for Chinese visitors who craved the sheer variety and the prestige they represented. It was their chance to taste American abundance. But as greed drove costs sky high and the crowds disappeared, these icons of hospitality slammed their doors shut for good. For Vegas loyalists, it was a tragedy, like watching the city's very soul being carved out. But for Chinese travelers, it was a chilling message, a warning of something far more sinister. The message was clear. Vegas no longer wanted them. The rot spread even to the entertainment giants. World-renowned Cirque du Soleil shows, once packed with international visitors, were forced to cut back. The magic fading. Can you believe it? Some productions admitted to slashing the special discounts designed to lure Chinese tour groups, but it was useless. The demand had utterly vanished. What was once a vibrant cultural beacon for the world now looked like a hollow, empty stage. All these body blows created a toxic, self-perpetuating death spiral of doubt. Fewer Chinese tourists meant the cash dried up. Less cash meant devastating cutbacks and closures, creating a cheapened, hollowed-out experience. And that pathetic experience, it just repelled even more tourists. By the close of a disastrous 2024, the verdict was in. In China, Las Vegas was no longer the glittering, essential destination it had been for decades. Its golden age was over. Instead, it was being dismissed, branded as a grotesquely overpriced, overhyped, and dangerously unpredictable tourist trap. But hold on, because here is the real gut punch. All of these public humiliations, the fine, the empty hotels, the boarded up buffets, they might just be a smokescreen. They may not be the real reason Chinese visitors fled Las Vegas in droves. Because insiders are whispering about much darker forces at work. A terrifying combination of Beijing's iron-fisted crackdown on its citizens and the Strip's own rotten, hidden scandals. And if these whispers are true, then the collapse of Vegas is not just about losing money. It's about explosive secrets that the powerful will do anything to keep buried. The official numbers and the sanitized headlines? They're telling you one story. But the people on the ground, the ones living and breathing this nightmare, they tell a completely different one. Behind the facade of neon and polished corporate lies are the raw voices that are systematically silenced from the official reports. Dealers, waiters, cab drivers, even the few remaining tourists. Their harrowing accounts paint a grim, disturbing picture of why Chinese travelers are abandoning this city as if it were plague-ridden. Listen to Maria, a cocktail server who survived on the Strip for over a decade. She remembers the golden nights, when her section was a whirlwind of activity, swarmed by massive Chinese tour groups. They were ordering the most expensive liquor on the menu without even blinking. The tips weren't just generous, they were life-changing, sometimes more in one night than she'd make in a whole week from anyone else. But in the bleak year of 2024, she says those nights didn't just end. They were annihilated. It was like someone just flipped a switch off, she confessed. The buses vanished. The tables were ghost towns, and overnight we were reduced to begging for shifts just to survive. And it's the exact same story of desperation from the city's taxi drivers. Before this catastrophe, the sound of Mandarin was the soundtrack of their workday as groups bounced excitedly between casinos. Drivers were prepared, keeping guidebooks and translation apps ready to welcome them. Now, all they hear is a deafening silence. Soul-crushing waits at the airport for fares that never come. No more trunks filled with luxury shopping bags. No more frantic high-stakes runs to the casinos at midnight. And then you have the tourists, the brave few who still dare to come. Speaking anonymously, they describe a city that feels hostile, a place where they feel unwelcome. Or worse, actively targeted. The predatory, skyrocketing prices on the Strip have left countless Chinese visitors with the sickening feeling that they are being systematically gouged, treated like walking ATMs to be exploited. One horrified tourist recounted being swindled into paying nearly triple the advertised price for a show ticket, only to stare out at a sea of empty seats. It was a blatant shakedown, he confessed. Others tell chilling stories of facing a thinly veiled contempt, treated not as honored guests, but as walking wallets ripe for the picking. These harrowing accounts have ignited a firestorm across Chinese social media, where viral tales of being fleeced in Vegas serve as a stark warning to anyone even thinking of visiting. But the rot goes deeper, as insiders from within the casinos themselves are now revealing. A former baccarat dealer exposed how management made a calculated, secret pivot away from Asian high rollers the moment Beijing began its crackdown on gambling abroad. The executives would never say it publicly, but they were terrified of their biggest spenders being snatched up by government agents, he revealed. So they gutted the VIP services, gambling that no one would notice. But it was noticed. And it was a deafening insult. Even the frontline hospitality staff speak in hushed tones about a palpable cloud of fear. They describe Chinese tourists desperately asking about safety, haunted by stories of robberies and scams that specifically target foreigners. And when the terrifying news spread that certain areas just off the Strip had become dangerous hotspots for violent crime, that fear metastasized into outright panic. A concierge at a major hotel admitted he's under orders to lie and downplay the risks, but confessed, if I were in their shoes, hearing what they hear, I wouldn't set foot in this city again either. What bleeds from these testimonies is a devastating portrait of disillusionment. For generations, Chinese tourists viewed Las Vegas as the ultimate escape, a sanctuary of freedom, glamour, and fantasy. Now, those same visitors speak of nothing but bitter disappointment, profound mistrust, and the gut-wrenching feeling that the city not only doesn't care about them, but actively despises them. And even these voices are likely just the tip of a terrifying iceberg. Because if the workers and the guests are already sounding the alarm, what truly monstrous stories are being deliberately silenced? What dark secrets are the casino kingpins so desperate to keep buried? If the insiders are screaming that Vegas is no longer a safe haven, the next question is utterly explosive. What vile scandals are being systematically covered up to stop the whole rotten truth from coming out? If the hushed warnings from employees and tourists exposed a deep sickness in Las Vegas, then the onslaught of lawsuits and government crackdowns was the damning diagnosis. Because beneath the dazzling facade of ringing slot machines and blinding neon, festers a corrupt network of financial schemes that authorities have been hunting for years. And innocent Chinese tourists were tragically caught in the crossfire. One of the most damning cases erupted in 2022, when a major casino operator was slammed with a fine of over $10 million by federal regulators for deliberately ignoring a flood of suspicious transactions. According to the explosive court documents, a shocking number of those transactions were directly tied to high-rolling visitors from China, some of whom were funneling unimaginable sums of cash through the city's casinos. For years, the casinos had shamelessly courted these players, knowing they could burn through millions in a single weekend. But the second investigators started demanding answers, those very same casinos hypocritically severed all ties, shutting down VIP services and locking down their policies. To the watchful eyes in Beijing, this was undeniable proof that its citizens were being monitored and targeted abroad. And in that instant, the risk of a trip to Vegas became a gamble no one was willing to take. At the exact same time, scandalous headlines began to surface about the junket operators, the shadowy middlemen who orchestrated everything from travel to luxury suites and massive lines of credit for their wealthy Chinese clientele. In Macau, Beijing had already declared all-out war on these junkets, accusing them of being fronts for massive money laundering and systemic corruption. When the same toxic whispers slithered into Las Vegas, the lawsuits followed. Plaintiffs leveled devastating accusations that certain operators were using strip casinos as a laundromat for illegal funds, masking the dirty money as legitimate gambling wins. While many of these cases were quietly settled out of court, the damage to the city's reputation was catastrophic and loud. For the average Chinese tourist reading about these scandals, the message was a blaring siren. Vegas was no longer safe. It was a trap. But perhaps the most damning indictment of all came from a series of shocking internal leaks. A trove of confidential memos unearthed by investigative journalists detailed how some Vegas casinos had knowingly and willfully ignored mountains of questionable transactions linked to foreign nationals. One leaked email, allegedly penned by a top casino executive, contained a bone-chilling warning. If Beijing discovers the true depth of this, we will lose an entire market overnight. That dire warning turned out to be a terrifying prophecy, not for the casinos, but for the tourists themselves. This web of lawsuits and secrets bred a paralyzing fear. If they were cheated out of their money on the Strip, who could they possibly trust? Could they be branded as targets for investigation the moment they stepped back on home soil? Win too big, and would they find their names blacklisted on some shadowy government ledger? Suddenly, the stakes weren't just about chips on a baccarat table. They were about life itself. As one horrified Chinese business traveler confessed to reporters, Vegas once represented freedom. Now, it feels like an elaborate, gilded trap. And the sick irony? Las Vegas was built on the very concept of risk. It shamelessly sold itself as the ultimate playground where fortunes could be made or utterly destroyed in the blink of an eye. But this new, terrifying risk has nothing to do with the luck of the draw. It's a calculated danger, a chilling threat to their legality, their safety, and the horrifying prospect of becoming disposable pawns in a high-stakes geopolitical chess match. And those lawsuits? They weren't just about exposing financial fraud. They ripped the curtain back, hinting at something far more sinister lurking in the shadows. Brave whistleblowers came forward with an explosive claim that notorious organized crime syndicates had turned the glittering Strip into a colossal laundering machine, seamlessly blending casino profits with tainted money from across the globe. If this is true, it means the vanishing act of Chinese tourists wasn't about high prices or shoddy service. It means they were likely warned off, intimidated by forces so powerful and far-reaching, they had no choice but to obey. And yet, the casino magnates desperately try to sweep it all under the rug. They chant the same tired mantra: Vegas is safe, Vegas is fun, Vegas is open for business. But dare to press them on the lawsuits, and they clam up, refusing to confront the allegations directly. Instead, they perform a classic misdirection, frantically pointing to shiny new shows, glitzy hotel renovations, or pathetic special deals for international guests. It's a pathetic charade, as if admitting to the scandals would finally confirm the dark secret everyone already suspects, that Las Vegas has been concealing a rotten truth about its toxic relationship with Chinese money. So the real question isn't whether Vegas was caught with its hands dirty. That's a given. The terrifying question question is, how much of this sordid story remains buried? Are these fines and lawsuits merely the tip of a monstrous submerged iceberg? Or are there even darker, more damning secrets festering beneath the neon glow? Secrets that hold the true, chilling explanation for why Chinese travelers have utterly vanished from America's supposed gambling mecca. The economic fallout from this exodus of Chinese tourists has been nothing short of catastrophic for Las Vegas, and the gilded facade is now cracking and crumbling for all to see. For decades, arrogant casino bosses boasted that the Strip was invincible, a recession-proof fortress shielded by an endless river of international cash. But today, the cold, hard numbers tell a devastatingly different story. Those opulent luxury malls, once playgrounds for Chinese shoppers where high-end boutiques were stripped bare of designer watches, handbags, and jewels, are now ghostly quiet, struggling with abysmal sales. Stores are desperately slashing staff and cutting hours. Others have simply vanished, closing their doors for good. Terrified employees whisper in the hallways that the disappearance of Chinese buyers has eviscerated their commissions, forcing countless workers to abandon the retail industry entirely. And out on the casino floors, a chilling silence hangs over the baccarat tables. Once the exclusive domain of Chinese high rollers, they now sit eerily empty. Dealers who once raked in life-changing tips from extravagant players now just stand there, idle and forgotten, waiting for the occasional small-time gambler to wander by. And this economic poison has seeped outward, infecting the entire city. Hotel occupancy rates on the Strip have plummeted. Restaurant bookings have cratered, and rideshare drivers now lament waiting for hours just for one decent fare. The whole city, once supercharged by a relentless torrent of big spenders, now feels like it's sputtering and running on empty. The human cost of this disaster is staggering and undeniable. Layoffs have savaged hotel staff, entertainers, and service workers, the very backbone of the city. For so many, the glittering promise of Las Vegas, the dream of a prosperous life, has twisted into an inescapable nightmare. And looking ahead, the experts see two starkly, terrifyingly different futures. The first scenario is a grim portrait of denial and decay. In it, Las Vegas stubbornly doubles down on its failed strategies, praying that the Chinese tourists will magically reappear. But if Beijing continues to choke off travel, and if Vegas proves incapable of cleansing its toxic reputation, the Strip is doomed to a long, agonizing decline. We could see casinos merge out of desperation, iconic hotels shutter their doors forever, and the city itself devolve into a hollowed-out shell of its former glory, just a gaudy, empty stage set with no soul. The other, more hopeful vision depends entirely on a radical reinvention. Some insiders argue that Vegas can still save itself by breaking its dangerous dependency on Chinese tourists and aggressively pursuing other markets. They talk about targeting wealthy Americans, luring in Europeans, or tapping into the new middle-class travelers from rising economies. The chatter also includes a seismic shift away from gambling and towards unique experiences. Massive concerts, world-class conventions, and even family-friendly entertainment. If, and it's a huge if, this is executed flawlessly, it could cushion the devastating blow and forge a brand new identity for the city. But make no mistake, even this path to salvation demands billions in new investment, fearless leadership, and a humiliating admission that the old, corrupt model is officially dead and buried. But the true enemy, the silent killer, is the ticking clock. With every agonizing month that drags by, the financial hemorrhaging gets worse, bleeding workers of their jobs and condemning businesses to bankruptcy. Las Vegas doesn't just need a plan, it needs a radical intervention. And it needed it yesterday. Because if the Strip forfeits its crown as the undisputed entertainment capital of the world, America risks losing that title forever. This forces us to confront a chilling question. Can Las Vegas possibly claw its way back from the brink in time? Or is it already too late? Has the city been sucked too far down the vortex of decay to ever escape? This entire glittering mirage was built on a single, arrogant promise that the party would rage on, eternally, no matter what chaos unfolded in the outside world. That the neon glow of the Strip would always be a siren's call, an irresistible lure. For decades, that delusion held. The city weathered recessions, scandals, and even the cataclysmic 2008 financial meltdown. But this This is a different beast entirely. The quiet, unnerving exodus of Chinese high rollers has struck a fatal blow to the very heart of the Vegas machine. That once guaranteed torrent of wealth that flooded its casinos, its opulent malls, and its lavish suites has vanished. The evidence of this decay is everywhere you look. Ghost town baccarat tables, boarded up buffets, and desolate luxury boutiques. Behind the scenes, terrified workers whisper about evaporated tips, while slick executives shamelessly evade questions about mounting legal troubles, and disillusioned tourists broadcast their disgust across the internet. Make no mistake, this is no mere statistical dip. This is a catastrophic collapse of faith. Once the shining beacon of American glamour and unbridled freedom, Las Vegas is now being branded by the world as a greedy, hostile, and dangerous trap. But the terrifying truth is, this rot doesn't stop at the city limits. If a titan like Las Vegas, one of America's most legendary cities, can be tarnished and brought to its knees this fast, what does that reveal about the fragility of the American dream itself? How can this nation claim to be a land of endless opportunity when its most garish monument to success is sputtering and dying? Or worse, is Las Vegas just the canary in the coal mine? The first terrifying tremor before a much deeper national unraveling? For now, the Strip puts on its nightly masquerade, its glow a deceptive facade, desperately trying to hide the deep, systemic cracks that insiders know are spiderwebbing through its very foundation. But if this city fails to engineer its own salvation, then we are all just spectators at the agonizing, slow-motion execution of an American legend. So I leave you with this chilling thought. If the fortress of Las Vegas can crumble, which one of our cities is next on the chopping block?